Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I'm a 25-year-old female and I've known my present fiance for 10 years now. My parents were always very fond of him, but suddenly their attitude towards him changed around 4 years ago. This was when he got into an accident. My fiance had always loved going for long drives around the city. One such drive turned out to be a greatest nightmare. He got into an accident with a drunk driver and got badly injured. He was rushed to the hospital where they worked hard to save his life. Fortunately, he did manage to escape the ordeal with his life. However, he did not manage to escape unscathed. Despite the best efforts of the doctors, they could not save his eyes. He became permanently blind, getting into depression for a few months as a result. During this entire ordeal, I stood by him and supported him to the best of my abilities, but my parents were suspiciously absent. Neither of them came to visit him even once, and whenever they called me, they only asked me whether I was sure that he would be blind for life and whether I was certain that I still wanted to marry him despite his handicap. The thought of breaking off our engagement had never even occurred to me, and I told them so. I had promised to love him through the good and the bad, and I wasn't going to step back from my words. It took more than a year for my fiancé to adjust to his blindness. However, he was strong and he had me and his family for support. He managed to overcome his handicap and even started living a completely normal life, albeit with some adjustments to suit his physical challenges. He had become very insecure during this point, and it took multiple reassurances for him to believe that he wasn't going to ruin my life by marrying me. My parents had started to be very hesitant about my bond with him at this point. It seemed like they weren't completely comfortable with a physically handicapped boy as their daughter's partner, but they also knew how stubborn I am, and so they decided not to make any efforts to dissuade me from my decision. However, it seems like being engaged to him was the last straw. When I announced that he had proposed and I said yes 7 months ago, they weren't very happy. My mom was especially vocal about her feelings. She asked me if I was sure that this was what I wanted, to be tied down to all my life. I was genuinely offended on behalf of my fiancé, and I told her that I had loved him without any inhibitions. A physical handicap was not going to stop me from being faithful to my relationship. I knew that we could make it because my fiancé really did live a normal life and did a normal job. His blindness was not much of a barrier to him. My mom didn't seem to believe me, but left it at that. Coming to the present day, we have decided to start sending invitations for our wedding. We're getting married in 2 months, so we are sending the invites now. We decided to send the first invitations to our parents. His parents were very happy with the invitations and complimented us on the designs. They RSVP'd within an hour and everyone was jubilant. A different story. My parents didn't respond at all, and at the end of the day, I decided to call them up. Neither of them picked up my calls, and after a while, they blocked my number from their mobiles. I was shocked because this wasn't a response I had been expecting. My fiancé consoled me for a while as I completely broke down. I had expected my parents to be happy for me as I was living my dream, but I had been cut off from the family with no explanation. My fiancé hesitantly brought up the fact that they might not want to attend our wedding since they were never happy with the fact that I wanted to marry someone who was blind. But his point made no sense, since if that was the reason, my mom would have talked to me like an adult, telling me how she feels, instead of simply cutting me off. All I can look forward to at this point is the wedding, and it will be the best wedding ever. I got married a few weeks back. My parents are still not talking to me, and I'm still hurt and confused. While my husband contemplated talking to them and trying to set things right between us, I received a message from my dad on Facebook. He asked me to meet him at a cafe near their house because he needed to have an important discussion with me. Already having an inkling of what this discussion would be about, I agreed to meet up with him. I anxiously waited the entire night for the next day to come as I was going through a million reasons as to why my mom would have completely blocked me. I could think of no reason as I had not said or done anything offensive or hurtful. My wedding day was supposed to be about happiness, but they ruined it for me. That entire night I was terrified and nauseous, unable to sleep due to the anxiety induced by my parents. So I met up with my dad today and got to know the reason why my mom thinks that cutting me off from the family is the best solution. And honestly, I am fuming at this point, so I don't even know if I can type straight, but bear with me. My dad asked me if everything was all right with my relationship and marriage and actually seemed disappointed when I responded in the affirmative. He clearly told me that I was at a point in my life where I would have to make a difficult choice. I could either choose to still be a part of my family with all the legal and social implications and break off my marriage, or I could choose to go ahead with the marriage and not have my parents with me anymore. Their reasoning was that I was dragging myself down to be with someone who was physically handicapped. If I insisted on this marriage, then my life and career would be ruined. I would be trapped in a marriage with no way out, and I would have to support him all my life. Since this will be hurtful for my parents to watch, they don't want to keep contact with me anymore. They also felt that their social position would be challenged if I married someone who was blind. My parents are affluent and have always managed to maintain an image in front of our relatives. This image would be ruined after I married my husband as he was physically challenged, and our relatives would whisper about me and my parents. Since they held their reputation in society very strictly and have always tried to uphold their image perfectly in front of society, me doing something they deem shameful is going to hurt their image, and they'd rather cut me off. At this point, I was hurt and almost at breaking point. My parents knew how hard I had fought for my husband, how much we had struggled to reach a point of normalcy in our personal lives and our relationship after the accident. I had really fought that they would realize how happy he makes me and not fight my decisions like this. What hurts me the most is that it took only them a split second to cut me off as if they never held any emotional attachment for me. I knew by now that my decision would impact the rest of my life, and honestly, I could only see one real choice. There was only one right thing to do, and I was going to do it no matter how hard this decision was. I told my dad that I was ready to forgive them if they ever properly apologized to both of us. I would be happier than ever if they decided to keep contact with me again with the proper respect due to my husband. However, I was not going to sacrifice my relationship in order for that to happen. I knew where my duty lay and what my conscience was telling me to do. I was not going to do the wrong thing for shallow reasons, simply because my parents were shallow enough to let their image and society affect their decisions. I had promised my husband to be with him through everything, and I was going to do that. He is a good man, and I am not going to leave him just on the basis of the fact that my parents think he will ruin our reputation. My father seemed shocked to hear my response. It seemed that he had expected me to fall back in their arms, apologizing for my crimes against them. Honestly, I knew that I am in the right, so I'm not letting them sway my decision at all. After returning home, I had a long talk with my husband and gave him a watered-down version of the reason why my parents decided to go no contact and cut me off from the family. I was scared to do it because I had expected what happened as a result, a return of his insecurities, as he went back to feeling like he was holding me back now. I had to convince him that I was happy with my marriage, and so should he be, because we were living our dream. It doesn't matter that he couldn't see. I fell in love with him in his entirety, not with his eyes. It took a while to convince him that I was happy and he hadn't ruined me. My mom called him a few minutes later to demand that he divorce me because he was going to become a burden for me, and I was going to have to support and help him all his life. Since he didn't stand up for himself, I decided to do it for him. I took the mobile and simply told my mom to never contact me or my husband ever again. I blocked her off from his contacts and then proceeded to block my parents on every single social media I was in. I could put up with them insulting me as long as they apologized, but insulting my husband was taking it too far, especially when they knew that he was very insecure about the fact that he was handicapped and there were things he depended on me for. I had to work a lot to convince him that he was not a burden on me, and I am not going to allow her to bring him down again. I hope my family stays out of my life for good now. Soft ESH, because you could have given your parents a chance. They only did what they did because they were worried about you, but they had no right to insult your husband and ask you to break your marriage, so they are definitely the AH. I feel like OP's parents are one day going to notice how respect and image dwindles with time, but relationships forged through the years stay forever. I wish OP and her husband all the best for their future. Me, 37-year-old female, and my husband, 37, have 3 kids, 14 male, 14 female, and 12 male. A few days ago, I got home from a dinner for work and saw that a vase in the kitchen was on the floor in pieces. It was a very expensive vase. While we can afford a new one, I was still very upset about it. I see my twins sitting on the couch and ask what happened. My daughter tells me that our 12-year-old was playing with one of his baseballs and broke it. My youngest loves sports memorabilia and does collect it, but I was immediately suspicious because he takes very good care of his antique sports memorabilia and wouldn't throw a baseball like that. Even with his modern baseballs he uses for sport, I've never seen him throw one in the house. My 12-year-old isn't a great liar, and when I asked him, he said he did it, and it seemed like he was lying. Then I noticed he had chocolate on his shirt, and it was obvious that they had tried to bribe him with chocolate. My daughter's boyfriend works at a chocolatier and gets some free chocolate. I then asked both of the twins what happened, but separately. First, I took my son into our bedroom, where he immediately admitted that him and his sister were playing with one of their brother's antique baseballs and broke the vase. I was obviously disappointed in his actions, but I was glad he was honest. When I took my daughter into our room, she insisted it was their younger brother and refused to acknowledge what she did. I then went back to my son. I told him he lost his phone for a week, and he complied. No other punishment. He said he was going to a place where him and his friends take welding lessons, which is fine by me. I decided that losing their phone would be the punishment. My daughter refused to give the phone and still insisted that it was her younger brother. I then got my youngest in the room with us and asked him to explain why he had chocolate all over himself, where he admitted that she bribed him with sweets. After that, my daughter just went silent and refused to give me the phone when I asked. I then told her that she would not be allowed to go to the freshman prom for lying to me and refusing to hand over her phone. The lying is what really makes me upset. My son is the more careless and chill sibling. So I kind of expected less pushback from him, since he's more likely to just go with a punishment. My daughter is a good kid, but she can be a lot more defensive, which isn't inherently bad, but was in this case. My husband said I was being too harsh and should let her go, but I am still not on board with letting her go. He's the more permissive parent, and we've talked about how the kids know he's easy to manipulate, but he said he thinks that this punishment is unfair. I love him, but I disagree, and I don't want my daughter to think that she can get away with lying. She could have done something with her friends too, but insisted that she keep the phone. NTA. Lying, bribing, doubling down when caught in the lie, and refusing to give up the phone? You definitely needed to escalate the punishment. Stick to it. Your husband giving in will only reinforce that it's okay to behave this way. This is the moment to teach the daughter about why it's important to be a person who is worthy of trust. She's lied. Therefore, she won't be extended freedoms and privileges. She should be in for a long summer of chaperoned activities. When she demonstrates that she's trustworthy, then she gets to have more autonomy and privileges. NTA. Backstory. I'm a 39-year-old male and was a teen dad at 16 to my daughter, Gabby, 23. Her mom and I, family, convinced us to get married for the sake of her. We got married and had another child, 20, male. I divorced my children's mom when she cheated on me and got pregnant. Gabby herself became a teen mom at 17 and had my granddaughter, Emily, 6, female. Gabby's mom threw her out and I immediately took her in. The dad's family wasn't much help, so I took care of nearly everything. My wife, 34, Lauren, even watched Emily while Gabby finished school. When Gabby hit college, she at first started leaving Emily with us 3 days a week for 3 hours. Lauren and I didn't mind after the first time because we took into consideration that it was her first year of college. It then slowly escalated to 5 days a week for 8 hours. I immediately shut it down because my wife was pregnant at the time. Gabby apologized and didn't bring Emily around for a while. When my son was born, Gabby started this crap again. After 2 weeks, I told Gabby this has to stop. She stopped and sent her mom after us. Recently, Gabby met a new guy. She slowly started doing this again. When I confronted her, she said her new boyfriend doesn't like kids. When I asked her why in the world is she with a child-free man, she stated she just fell in love. I told her it's very unrealistic, but Gabby believes he'll eventually love and accept Emily as his own. Now, onto the problem. My wife and I had a daughter doing you-know-what. Her parents haven't been able to see the baby yet. They are from South Korea. We decided this summer to go and visit her family. When Gabby was over yesterday, she asked me if I can take Emily for 2 weeks mid-June. I reminded Gabby that I leave June 1st and won't be home for a month. She then tells me that's fine. When I ask her what she meant, she then tells me that she'll happily pay to send Emily to South Korea with us for the summer. I immediately said no. I told Gabby we plan to spend this time with Lauren's family. She then drops it on me. You don't get a vacation from being grandpa. Not my best moment, but I shot back with, and you don't get a vacation from being a mom. She got pissed off and started ranting on how I'm a bad grandpa and that I should be happy to take Emily. When I asked her where she's going that's so important, Disney World, she said her boyfriend's family wants to make this a family-only vacation and that Emily isn't allowed because she isn't blood. She then took Emily and stormed off. She sent her mom after me again, and when I said, she's your granddaughter too, you can take her for those 2 weeks, she replied with, but Emily is closer to you. My son said he doesn't agree with his mom and sister, but said that Emily came to his apartment today crying. She was crying that I didn't love her and only care about my kids. It broke my heart and I feel bad. AITA? OP is being played hard. However, I can't help but feel awful for this little girl. Her mom doesn't want her, and I guarantee she knows it. OP, your daughter has decided a penis is more important than her child. I do not believe this is going to get any better. NTA. NTA, your daughter is childish and manipulative as hell. I'm sure you did your best, but she ended up that way anyway. I understand why you let her have an inch to begin with, but you have been reminded why the saying about inches and miles exists.